Hello, this is Jim for the Monopoly Project. We're on the Monopoly Project yacht to do our floating book reviews. And of course, every successful real estate investor has a yacht. And this is the Monopoly Project yacht. Unfortunately, it's a Bikini Girls Day off, so you just have me. We're floating on Val Vista Lakes. It's sunset on the 7th of January. It's kind of cold here for Phoenix standards. But as you notice, we are under electric propulsion as we were before. On our last book report, we stated that we had bought a surplus Navy nuclear aircraft propulsion system on eBay, and we were going to install it. Turns out there's a bylaw in the HOA for Val Vista Lakes that you cannot use nuclear propulsion on the lake. So we had to resell it on eBay, but I actually made a profit. We resold it. The European Union has just declared that nuclear energy is now green. And so Ireland bought the propulsion system. They plan to strap it to their island, and they plan to get away from England, their hated historical enemy, and they're going to propel Ireland to the south coast of France off of Cannes, where they can gamble and drink to their heart's delight. So we wish Ireland luck with it. We did make a small profit, plus they gave us a case of Irish whiskey and a quart of Guinness. So we're well set. In any case, floating book review. We're here to review two books. The first one is Silver in the Stones, and let me see if I can do that, by Peter Grant. And the second one is a Time picture book with short articles on the last years of the Civil War. I bought this like 15 or more years ago. In any case, we're going to get to those books right away. First, we'll make a few course corrections, and then we'll get back and start our book reviews. Thank you. This is Jim for the Monopoly Project. Okay, it's Jim. I'm back for the Monopoly Project on early January. We're doing our floating book review, and of course, in the intro, you saw that this was one of the two books we were going to review. It's Time Warner, I don't know, whatever it was back in the early mid 2000s. They sold these books, and I bought one. I looked online, and I can't see that you can buy it anymore. But in any case, it's a picture history with short articles about all of the subjects, and of course it concentrates on the three guys we see here. Obviously, Abraham Lincoln, who was president of the United States; Robert E. Lee, who was the leader of the Confederate armies; and Ulysses S. Grant, who was the leader of the Union armies and eventually the architect of the victory. The fourth person who's not pictured is William Sherman, General William Tecumseh Sherman, who was Grant's right-hand man in the campaign and was largely responsible for the tactics and the overall strategy. And Sherman's become famous because of his march to the sea through Georgia, where he and Grant decided that the only way to end this war was to totally destroy the South, including disrupting all the civilian population. Up until that time, most war ignored civilians other than ancillary damage. But this was a first modern war in the sense that they actually targeted civilian assets, farms, railroads, all sorts of stuff. And more importantly, it was the first modern war because they started using repeating weapons, primarily lever action rifles, and they did have not a Gatling gun. They had a machine gun of some sort, although had just been developed and it didn't really have a large effect on the war. But it was the first modern war. Both the French and the Germans sent observers to see what happened, and of course the French and the Germans ended up in the Franco-Prussian War 5 or 6 years later in 1870, in which the Germans won. It was a precursor to World War I and then World War II. In any case, it's a great book, especially if you're interested in history, especially if you're interested in the Civil War. There's lots of great pictures. Most of them you can see are black and white because they just started photography 10 years ago, or 10 years before the war, 15 years. And so they have a lot of pictures of, not a lot, they have pictures of Grant and Sherman and Lincoln and and even Robert E. Lee that have been um, saved, and some of them been colorized thanks to Ted Turner. So thank you, Ted Turner, for that contribution. What do I want to say about it? It's a great book. If you're a history buff, you got to read it. I did want to make a comment about the four people. Um, Obviously, all of them are very interesting in their life and their character. I was particularly impressed by Sherman. Sherman actually had a nervous breakdown when he was a general for the Union at the beginning of the war, and he voluntarily asked to be relieved, and he was. But Grant saw something in him that the others didn't, and he brought him back. And like I said, Sherman was a key strategist in the Union effort. But my favorite person of all times is U.S. Grant, because if you read his life story, it's just amazing. I mean, he up until the Civil War came, he was I think in his early 50s when the Civil War came. He had been basically a failure at everything he had done, including being asked to leave the Army. He did graduate from West Point, but he was asked to leave the Army because of supposed drinking problems, and he acknowledged them. So it isn't speculation or rumor, but he goes on to become, a great general. He won basically every battle, even though he was at times outnumbered, and he was even outnumbered as the attacker. And in general, when you talk about battles, it's said that the attacker needs a 2-to-1 advantage. Grant actually won the Battle of Vicksburg, where he was at a 1-to-3 disadvantage. So in any case, I really find Grant fascinating. And then Grant went on to become president, and Grant's reputation fell strongly as president because the Southern Democrats started this lost war thesis, and of course Grant and especially Sherman were the villains in the whole story. And if you look at what Grant actually did as president, it's pretty amazing. He did have too much trust in a lot of his friends, many of them who were crooks and were part of his administration and ended up stealing money. So that he did have that fault. He was too trusting of his friends, and I think he expected being president would be equivalent to being general, where you gave orders and people followed them. That generally works in the military. It absolutely does not work in politics. You got to know who's really on your side, and you can see the last 2 or 3, 4 or 5 presidents, even back to Richard Nixon. You can see that dynamic. So, in any case, like I said, a great book. I wish I could find this is titled the Final Year, so I assume there's others that started, but I can't find them. And like I said, I can't find the book for sale online. Certainly not at Amazon. So that's why when you look at the blog posts, it doesn't have a link, because I don't know where you would find them. Maybe a library or something. I'll ask Megan, our library friend, if she can find some copies of it in the Maricopa County library system. In any case, this is Jim from the Monopoly Project. We're waving to the boats going by. This is Jim for the Monopoly Project for our floating book reviews for early January. Thank you, and we'll catch you on the next Monopoly Project floating book review.